everybody, welcome back to the 420 Bible Study and Torah Tour. We literally are burning fragrant incense in the temple, but it's on the outside of the body. How do we bring it to the inside of the body? Well, we actually have to breathe it. So, with that, I got my bowl of fragrant incense, cannabis, fire and wood for Hashem, the aroma of Christ, the anointed one, the Messiah. What does the Messiah have? The message. What is the message? Can you pass the test and believe that you can actually get high with the Most High? I'm like, I can. The first fire ever created. Hash, hemp. Hash on the inside, hemp on the outside. At that point, you've got every ship and vessel, including your blood vessels, floating on your bloodstream, well accounted for. And that's the whole point. God actually can get fed, and you can feed your spirit the spiritual milk that Paul speaks about in 1 Peter 2, or that Peter speaks about. So with that, we're going to get into Ezra 3. Open your books. Ezra 3. We're going to rebuild the altar. What is the altar? The altar of incense. And the incense is joy and gladness, and it's perfume, and it brings joy to the heart, and everything that goes along with the altar. And what's really interesting is I went to a meeting with a really, really good thespian actor who knows both the Hebrew and the Greek, and he was speaking about this poem called Altar Wise. And so I did the research on Altar Wise, and it totally turned out to be the Garden of Eden, and Noah, and Moses, and its altar of incense, and its wisdom, which is like honey, which is a land flowing with milk and honey. And that's our inheritance. So we're supposed to inherit wisdom. Where do we get it? From God. Not man, but from God. All right. How do we rebuild the altar? Let's listen and find out what Ezra is told. When the 7th month came and the Israelites had settled in their towns, the people assembled together as one in Jerusalem. Exterior, everyone coming into the one area. Flip it to the inside of the body. The great assembly is every cell. Remember how Jesus fed 4,000 or 5,000 people? How would you like to feed 10 times 13 times to the 13th power? I think it's like 2 to whatever it is. 10 times 3 to the 13th power. Millions of cells. That's what you feed. Every time you take a breath of air from God's manna, God's food. So then Joshua, son of Josedek, and his fellow priests, and Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, and his associates began to build the altar of God of Israel to do what? To burn and sacrifice burnt offerings on it in accordance with what is written in the law of Moses, the man of God. Moses is Emmanuel, a man of God. And Emmanuel, a man of God, Moses says, and God will raise up another prophet like me, who will explain everything. And Jesus says that he is the Messiah, and he will explain everything. But he only spoke in parables until he comes back, and the other prophet like Moses comes back. And at that point, Jesus is coming in the clouds because he's the aroma. And maybe, just maybe, I can explain a little bit more than I thought I ever could. Who knows at the 420 mark. Despite their fear of the peoples around them, they built the altar on its foundation and sacrificed burnt offerings on it to Hashem, both the morning and evening sacrifices. And Jesus was the morning, and I am the evening. Then, as I best understand the book, then in accordance with what is written, they celebrated the Festival of Tabernacles with the required number of burnt offerings prescribed for each day. There's your prescription, ladies and gentlemen. It is Ezra 3, verse 4. And it says, in accordance with what is written, they celebrated the Festival of Tabernacles with the required number of burnt offerings prescribed for each day. After that, they presented regular burnt offerings, the new moon sacrifices, and the sacrifices for all appointed sacred festivals of Hashem, as well as those brought as free will offerings to Hashem. On the first day of the 7th month, they began to offer burnt offerings to Hashem, though the foundation of the Lord's temple had not yet been laid. Oh my goodness. We're going to pause there before we get to the rebuilding of the temple, because we just want to go slowly. Rebuilding the altar. And it was done in accordance with what is written in the Torah, in the law of Moses, which is this book right here. And it says, they built the altar of God of Israel to sacrifice burnt offerings on it, so that there would always be food in God's house, and sacrifice burnt offerings on it to the Lord for both the morning and evening sacrifices, in accordance with what is written. So this is what is written, and we now know what the burnt offerings and sacrifices are. And if you don't do them, then you actually go to Daniel and you become an abomination that causes desolation, because you don't feed your spirit any soul food. Baruch Hashem for starting a fire, right? So with that, you guys want to take every day seriously. Think of it like this. You're in heaven now. Thank you. You get to meet everybody. Sit down with Ezra and read. Sit down with John or Peter or Paul or Mary. Listen to the Beatles. They're totally high. We're all totally high. How many of us thank God and serve Him? I do. Baruch Hashem.